Well, I guess the next one I want to ask you is how can we help bring the culture of learning music to more people? And what can we do to encourage them to explore sound without fear of making mistakes or not being good enough?
Hmm. So I want to answer that with like uh in two different ways. So I think in terms of something I've come to terms with over the last year, and I'm gonna address the first part of the question first. The how do we reach more people? How do we get more people making music? Um, Something I've thought about in my reflection after going through this high school band program, which was great. We were a very good high school band. We played at all these really well respected festivals, and I played in front of the Lincoln Memorial like when I was in high school. Had a ton of great experiences there. Same in college. Played at a bunch of conventions. I marched in a marching band in the Rose Bowl, like in California. Again, awesome experiences. Same when I student taught and when I was teaching high school band in Coal City. I think though, while those are really good experiences, while we do really good things as music teachers, as a whole, the music education community is geared toward a culture that is not relevant to a lot of what our students experience. And so I again like to go back to what I said earlier. Everyone likes music. Sometimes we don't like that music, right? Or we don't like this music, but everyone likes music. And what we teach our kids in a traditional orchestra band choir setting is not what they are used. That's not the music that they typically engage with, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Exposure is always great. And as someone who will go from a Megan the Stallion tune to like a Tchaikovsky symphony in the same playlist shuffle, I think we should be teaching our students to reach out and branch out and try to open up their ears to other genres. But I also think that it's our duty as educators to provide something that is culturally relevant to them. When I think of a strong English classroom, a strong high school or middle school English classroom, at least when I have kids, or even the kids that I have in front of me now, I don't want them just reading literature from the 19th century English tradition. There's other fantastic literature that they could be exposed to as well. And that and more importantly, there's literature that's going to be relevant to them in that moment. That living in America in 2021, living in America in 2021 as a Black person or a brown person or a person from the LGBTQ community. And so again, like, and I said 19th century Britain, but like Shakespeare is great. Jane Austen is great. Catcher in the Rye. I loved Catcher in the Rye as a kid. I read that. It was like, um, but across the board in education, and I think especially in music education, we need to be providing resources and opportunities that are going to speak to our kids a little bit more, that are less in the abstract, that are less about um, jamming down hundreds of years of traditions and literature down their throats and meeting them somewhere in the middle. Um, so I think it's really important. Like, again, for example, all of my kids that I know, 90% of them are into hip hop, rap, and R&B. That is not currently a thing that you can get trained in at most music schools in the country. So I have a lot of very interested musicians that are interested in those genres that really um, that they're anchored in that genre because it's been what they've grown up with. It's part of their culture. But in terms of realizing their full potential in that genre and helping them in that case, I'm less equipped to do that compared to teaching them how to play in a great orchestral style. Again, it's awesome that like we can do that. Um, but there should be opportunities for those kids because at the end of the day, music is music. And music teaching is music teaching, and music making is music making. I'm happy with my kids making music and listening to music as long as it's something that is satisfying to them, whether it's a Tchaikovsky symphony, like I said earlier, a Shostakovich symphony, or the Tupac album, or Megan Thee Stallion album, an Ariana Grande album. I want them, the skills that I want them to have as a classical, quote unquote, classical musician would be similar skills that I would want them to have if they were a rapper. I want them to be able to keep time. I want them to be able to sing with good intonation. I want them to think critically about diction. I want them to blend well and learn how balance works in a musical group. I want them to know how to communicate within a musical ensemble. You know, it's the same skills. We just need to, I think we as music educators need to switch our frame to something that's a little bit more on the kids' side. And I think that's how we get kids in music rooms. I've said this a million times to other friends too. I don't understand why in band, orchestra, and choir programs, music programs in general, why we're always like, we need numbers, we need numbers, we need numbers. When again, every kid likes music. And so if every kid likes music, it should be very easy to get them in our classrooms. But if we're not providing them something that is relevant or interesting or applicable, what are they going to like? And again, I love band. I think it's great. More than likely, especially depending on where they're at in the country, they're not going to be able to play in a band post college. You know, there's the occasional community bands. But if you're going to go from a college level, like at least in my experience, I went from a college level group to a community band. And while I believe strongly in community bands, they're great things. That was a less satisfying experience for me. And so personally, I was trained as an orchestral musician, and that was great training. But I would have appreciated more if I could be a little bit more involved in the Chicago music scene. You know, like if you called me and was like, "Hey, Eriq, I have this salsa gig coming up. Could you help me out?" I'd be like, maybe. Can you give me like 3 months to learn the music? You know. Whereas if you were like, "I have this Broadway show and here's the book," I'd be like, "No problem." You know. So I think it's important that we give students the 21st century skills and experiences in terms of a music setting, and that we don't abandon these classical adventures that we have. They're great too, and they're very enriching. But we can add, you know, we can add on to that experience. So that's the first part of the question that I went on a tirade on. What was this? Oh, students overcoming their anxieties and fears and things like that. That's always tricky. I think step 0 is establishing yourself as their teacher as someone who is empowering and safe. Because if you're someone that makes them scared, they're not going to be willing to try anything. Why would they try something to just be yelled at or belittled or berated? But if they know it's okay if they fail, if they trip up, I think they're going to be more likely to take a chance, because that's all it is. It's just taking chances until you get it right. So I think as a preliminary step, that's really important. That, and I'm seeing less and less of it, which is making me happy. We have to get out of old school music teacher attitude of like, you're gonna play all your scales, and if you mess up one note, I'm gonna yell at you in front of the entire group. Or if you didn't practice this line, I'm gonna berate you in front of the group. We could totally switch that perspective and say, you didn't get that, I'm gonna help you get that, because you didn't just get that, and I'm here to support you and get you there. That doesn't mean we don't hold students accountable, right? But that relationship is really important. I'm more receptive to harshness and directness from a person that I feel safe and comfortable with, who I know who has good intentions, because I feel, like I said, I feel safe with that person. I know their intentions are good. So if they're being more direct with me, if they're holding me to a standard that they know I can achieve, I'm going to be much more receptive with that. So that's step number 0. Like I said, we still hold students accountable. So sometimes you do have to throw kids in the pool. And that's actually something that I was telling students about this, and I'm actually really glad that you kind of just did it. I was stuck on step 0 for a little bit this school year because of because of the pandemic. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much going on, and we want to be very culturally sensitive and whatever, right? Um, and all that is true. I'm not upset that I was coming in with that lens, but you know, you have to play good parent, bad parent, quote unquote, in both roles. And so like I love that you came into my class and you were just like, we're just gonna do it. Like, hey, uh, this isn't actually a kid in my class, but Michael, say this rhythm for me. I love that you did that. And they just did it, you know? And that they were like, oh, we're throwing in, we just have to kind of adapt. And so I think that's also really important too, that we also teach kids how to bounce back and be resilient. We gave presentations for that project I was just discussing yesterday in one of my classes. And one of my students who communicates exclusively in the chat, her group was up and no one in her group was volunteering to present. She's very concerned about her grade. So after 7, 8 months of being in school together, she finally, because like she was just forced to in that situation to present, she got on the mic and just went at it. And after she did that, I was really proud. I had never heard her voice before. She did a killer job. She had nothing to be afraid of. She's a very intelligent student. Um, but after that, like the students were all like, that's another thing too. Class culture is a very important thing, which I really strive to do. Like, again, we're very empowering of each other. There's enough I always tell my kids there's enough negativity in the world. Like, leave that there. Like with this, we can throw shade at each other occasionally, but when you cross the line, that's the other thing. I'm dealing with 14-year-olds. So they're a little bit more mature and we can do a little bit more stuff. But I'm like, leave that kind of belittling it in the outside world. There's enough of that out there, and here we're going to be very empowering of each other. So she got done with her presentation, and everyone was in the chat like, "Oh my God, you did so awesome!" And like your presentation looks so good, and like you're super intelligent and all these sorts of things. And I got done telling her a story. When she finished, I told her a story like, guys, sometimes we need to just get thrown in. My grandfather is from Puerto Rico, and I don't have a lot of memories from my grandparents, but one story I remember him telling me was in Puerto Rico, his dad, my great grandfather, was teaching him how to swim. And the way he taught him how to swim was by literally just throwing him in the ocean and saying good luck. Not a good idea. Like, just don't throw your kids in the ocean. Probably not the way to do it. But my grandfather learned how to swim that day. So I think probably like every solution on the planet that I'm coming more to terms with, we need balance, right? We need to be very caring and loving and let them know that we care about them and we want them to do well and that we're here for their success. But we also need to occasionally just be like, dude, you're doing this thing. And you're just going to go into it and you will be fine. And I'll be cheering you on while you're doing it. And I'll be cheering you on when you're done with it. And one thing I also always tell students, if you botch a note at the concert, if you present in class, if you turn on your mic, if you turn on your camera, the earth doesn't just open up and you get swallowed to the center of the earth. You're going to be fine. The heart is racing a little bit during that, but you're probably not going to die. And again, we're all here to support you. So I think those are some important mitigating factors to get students a little bit more charged and willing to do the thing.
That's really well said. Really well said. I totally agree. I dealt with a lot of anxiety myself growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really nice having teachers such as yourself, just kind of like recognizing that and allowing me to come at my level
Mm-hmm.
and build me up from there, rather than like beat me down for not being at a level that they think I should be at. So those are some teachers that really had a profound impact on my life and the way that I live in all
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's really appreciative that I had that. My high school and middle school band director, Dave Buckley, shout out to him. He's awesome. And Betty Coulson, a piano teacher here in Chicago. Amazing. They really changed my life. So, yeah. Good. Your kids are lucky.
Thank you.